8 hours. Just think about that number for a second. 8 hours. In this world of, high strangeness, we're so used to the fleeting glimpse.
The flash of light.
Yeah, exactly. The light that zips across the highway, the few missing minutes on your watch after a long drive. But 8 hours? That's not an encounter.
No, that's a residency. It's a sustained event.
It's a siege. That's the word that kept coming back to me again and again, going through the material for today.
It completely changes the kind of data you're looking at. It's not a perceptual trick or, a momentary hallucination. It's interactive.
Well, welcome, everyone, to the UFO Forums podcast. And right off the bat, I want to invite you to join us over at the ufoforums.com. We have a thread going specifically for this case, the Mojave Incident. And trust me, after you hear what we're about to get into, you're going to want a place to talk about it.
You're going to need it.
And if you happen to be watching on YouTube, please do hit that like and subscribe button. It really genuinely helps us keep the lights on and keep digging into these files.
So let's set the stage, because this one it's a heavy one. Today, we are doing a deep dive into the account of a couple named Elise and Tom Gifford.
And this all comes from a book by Ron Felber called The Mojave Incident.
Right. And the incident itself happened way back in 1989. The core claim is that this couple, while they were out camping in the Mojave Desert, were subjected to this multi-hour abduction experience. And it involves conscious exposure, recovered memories, several different types of entities.
And a story that just sounds like reality completely breaking down.
So a total breakdown.
Okay, so you said conscious exposure. Let's just clarify that, because that's not the usual script, is it?
Not at all. The trope, the one we all know, is you get taken, you black out, and you wake up somewhere else with a bloody nose and a weird mark on your arm.
Which is, very convenient for the skeptic.
Of course. It opens the door for sleep paralysis, for dream states, for everything else. But the Giffords, they claim they were awake for a huge portion of it. They were conscious, they were talking to each other.
Pinching each other, saying, "Do you see what I see?"
Exactly. They were interacting with their environment for a huge chunk of this 8-hour window. They saw the approach, they saw the setup, they saw the beings before, any kind of mental switch got flipped.
All right, but before we even get into the camper with them, I have to play devil's advocate here. Our entire source is this one book by Ron Felber, and I looked him up.
As you should.
He writes crime novels, the Jack Madsen series, a book about a mob doctor. I mean, this is a guy who knows how to structure a thriller. He knows how to create tension and, sell a paperback. Doesn't that just throw up a huge red flag that this could just be creative writing?
It's 100% a valid flag to raise, and it was the first question I asked myself. If this was some known ufologist trying to push his pet theory, I'd be skeptical.
Or a sci-fi writer.
Oh, if it was a sci-fi writer, I'd be out immediately. But Felber is. He's a true crime guy. His background isn't just making stuff up. It's rooted in a certain kind of reality. He actually has a history in law enforcement.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he worked as a deputy sheriff. His job was transporting federal prisoners.
So he's dealt with con artists.
He's dealt with professional career liars. He wrote for True Detective magazine. His entire professional life before this was built on a foundation of, grit and facts. He says himself he has a highly tuned BS detector.
A BS detector, I like that.
And in the interview we have, he's very, very explicit. He had zero interest in UFOs. He didn't care about the subject at all. His entire knowledge base was vague memories of Betty and Barney Hill and some grainy old photos from Life magazine. He wasn't looking for this.
Okay, so then how does a mob doctor author end up writing about alien abduction in the middle of the Mojave? That doesn't track.
It came to him through a trusted source, a mutual friend of his and the Giffords, a guy who was a former varsity football player, a business colleague. He went to Felber. So this wasn't, a crazy letter from a stranger.
It wasn't a cold call.
No, it was a friend sitting him down and saying, look, you need to meet my best friends, the Giffords. What they told me is the most incredible thing I've ever heard.
That peer-to-peer thing is interesting. It does remove that seeking fame angle, at least at the beginning. Okay, so let's talk about the Giffords. Elise and Tom. If you're going to invent a hoax, you usually invent characters that fit the part, right? Who were these people?
They're almost painfully normal. Felber describes them as upwardly mobile, which is a very 1989 term.
Right.
They're college grads, they have 2 kids, they've got good careers. Tom's this archetype of the all-American guy. He was an all-state varsity football player. He's competitive. He's a hunter.
So not the kind of guy who's going to get spooked by a coyote howling.
Not even close. And then there's Elise. She's described as a homemaker who very much preferred civilization. She liked dancing. She liked comfort. She wasn't some New Age spiritualist out there trying to make contacts.
She didn't even want to be in the desert.
She did not want to be there, and that's a key detail. It establishes a kind of resistance to the whole environment from the get-go.
So when Felber finally meets them, what's their state of mind? Are they looking for a book deal? Are they trying to get on TV?
Absolutely not. And this is really where the whole hoax theory starts to fall apart for me. He describes them as wounded. That's the word he uses.
Wounded.
He compares their symptoms to what you see in prisoners of war: insomnia, severe paranoia, sexual dysfunction. They were deeply embarrassed by the whole thing. They were terrified that if the story ever got out, it would just completely ruin their lives.
And there's that one detail from the medical reports that it floored me. They weren't going to doctors hoping for someone to believe their alien story.
No, they were hoping for a diagnosis of brain lesions.
Can you just wrap your head around that for a second? You are in a doctor's office, literally praying that the MRI finds a tumor, praying for a physical defect in your brain, because that would be a better, easier explanation to live with than accepting that your memory is real.
It's that desperate search for a material explanation. A tumor is something you can understand. You can treat it, you can remove it. A psychosis, you can medicate it.
But an alien abduction?
There's no pill for that. It shatters your entire understanding of reality. Your ontological security is just gone.
So Felber hears the story, he sees their condition, and he decides to take it on. But he doesn't just, take out a notepad and start writing.
No, he goes full detective on it. He treats it like a criminal case.
Okay.
He says in the interview that he wasn't a wealthy man at the time, but he spent his own money. He flew the Giffords across the country to see top-tier experts.
He had to check if they were crazy first.
He needed to verify their sanity before he was willing to attach his name and his reputation to their story.
His first stop was Washington, D.C.
Yep. To see a Dr. Bernard Baton. And this isn't some strip mall psychic. Dr. Baton was the director of the National Center for Psychiatric Disorders, a very serious guy. He put them through the whole battery of psychiatric evaluations.
And then he takes them to Asheville, North Carolina for hypnosis. Now, okay, I got to stop you.
I knew you would. Retrogressive hypnosis. That's a
Yeah.
huge trigger word for skeptics.
Yeah.
It's seen as a way to implant false memories. I mean, the whole satanic panic in the 80s was basically fueled by therapists doing bad hypnosis.
Mhm.
So why should we give this any credit?
And that's a critical point. The distinction here is crucial. They didn't go to some New Age therapist. They went to a Dr. William Annixter at the Mountain Center of Psychiatry.
And his credentials?
His client list included the FBI. He worked with victims of violent crime, bank robberies, kidnappings. His job was to help them retrieve specific, verifiable details.
Like a license plate number.
Exactly. Or a facial scar, or the model of a gun. It's forensic hypnosis, not therapeutic hypnosis.
So the goal isn't how did that make you feel?
No, the goal is what did the license plate say? It's pure data retrieval. And Annixter is trained to not lead the witness, because in an FBI case, if you lead the witness, the whole case gets thrown out of court.
Okay, that is a big difference. So what did these two high-level doctors conclude? Did they find the brain lesions? Did they find out they were on drugs? They ruled out everything. Drugs was the first and most obvious hypothesis. It's 1989, they're camping in the desert. Maybe someone slipped them some LSD or they ate a peyote cactus by mistake.
Sure.
But the logic they use to debunk that is really solid. If you and I both take a hallucinogen, our hallucinations are going to be subjective. My brain is going to create images based on my subconscious, and your brain is going to do the same.
I see a dragon. You see your watch melting.
Precisely. We don't see the exact same dragon with the exact same number of scales breathing fire the exact same second, but the Giffords were constantly cross-referencing reality with each other in real time.
Do you see that light over there?
Yes. Okay, is it blinking 3 times now? Yes, it is. That shared objective verification, moment by moment, it just doesn't fit with an internal hallucination. It points to an external event they were both witnessing.
So Dr. Baton and Dr. Annixter give them the all clear mentally.
Completely. Dr. Baton's official conclusion called it a highly unusual traumatizing event outside normal human experience. Very careful language.
Very clinical.
Dr. Annixter, though, he went even further. He called it the most compelling case of its kind he'd ever seen. They confirmed the Giffords were not neurotic. They weren't prone to fantasy. They weren't suffering from any mental illness. They were just traumatized.
Okay. So we've vetted the author, we've vetted the witnesses, the foundation is set. Let's go to the desert. The year is 1989. What was the plan for this trip?
The whole trip starts with a classic domestic compromise. Elise wanted a fun adult weekend away. She wanted to go to Whiskey Pete's, the casino right on the state line.
Dancing, drinks, air conditioning.
All of it. Tom, on the other hand, wanted to go hunt mule deer. He'd apparently missed a really easy shot the year before, and his ego was a little bruised. He wanted redemption.
So the deal was, okay, we'll do 1 day of hunting for you, 1 night of dancing for me.
That was the deal.
Oh.
So they pack up their camper truck and head out to a place called the Mid-Hills campsite in the Mojave. But when they get there, it's completely full.
Is that weird? For the Mojave?
It's extremely. It's a massive, vast area. But on this particular night, every single spot was taken. And this right here is the catalyst. It's the inciting incident.
The sliding doors moment.
Totally. If they'd found a spot at Mid-Hills, surrounded by other families in their RVs, this story probably never happens.
Yeah.
But they didn't. So Tom, being the rugged outdoorsman, says, "Don't worry, I know this desert like the back of my hand."
A famous last words.
Pretty much. He drives them off-road, deep, deep into this secluded area. He's looking for privacy. And they end up near 2 landmarks.
Yeah.
The SEMA Dome and these big tabletop mountains.
And we need to pause on the geology of that spot, right? Because Felber makes a point of this.
He does, and it's a huge point. He mentions that this specific area they parked in is unusually rich in rare earth minerals, specifically cerium and lanthanum.
Why does that matter? In 1989, were those even valuable? What were they used for?
Back then, they were used for things like color TV tubes, polishing glass.
Yeah.
Useful, but not exactly a strategic resource.
But
today, cerium and lanthanum are the absolute backbone of advanced technology. We're talking high-performance optics, missile guidance systems, lasers, advanced avionics.
Wait, so hold on. If you look at this through a 21st century lens, they basically parked their camper directly on top of a resource deposit that is absolutely essential for building advanced weaponry and technology.
That's exactly it. Keep that detail in your back pocket. Because if you start to view the aliens not as monsters, but as, say, industrial machinery,
The whole story changes.
the whole narrative shifts. They might not have been haunted. They might have just been trespassing on an active mining site.
That changes the entire genre of the story. It goes from a horror movie to, like, an industrial accident report.
It does.
Yeah.
But at that moment, for them, it's just a camping trip. They're making a fire, they're roasting marshmallows, they're feeding little bits of bread to the kangaroo rats. It's a perfect, beautiful, crisp desert night.
And then comes the Oz factor.
The silence. It's almost a cliche in these stories because it's reported so consistently.
Yeah.
Suddenly the wind just dies, the crickets stop chirping, the kangaroo rats, they vanish. All the ambient sound of the desert is just vacuumed out of the air.
It's more than just quiet. It's an unnaturally heavy silence.
It's an isolation of the senses.
Yeah.
It puts you on high alert. And it's in that silence that Tom looks over his shoulder. And he sees the first object, a 30-foot diameter disc, just hovering there silently right behind him.
And his reaction is, what?
Suppression, total suppression. He's the protector. He sees this impossible thing, and his very first instinct is, don't scare Elise.
Wow.
He turns back to the fire like he saw nothing. He tries to distract her. He points up at the sky and says something like, hey, look at the constellations.
He's trying to get her to look up, to look anywhere but the horizon behind him.
But completely backfires. He points to a star, trying to name a constellation, and Elise says, oh, that's a double star. Wait, that one's a triple star.
And the stars are not stars.
The stars detach from the sky. They get brighter, they get bigger. And then suddenly, 9 of these objects arrange themselves on the horizon. They form this sprawling M formation.
The M formation.
And they start blinking codes at each other. This isn't random drifting. This is organized.
It's tactical, coordinated.
Completely. And this is where the visual part of the story gets truly bizarre. We're used to hearing about saucers or beams of light, but the Giffords describe something Felber calls the fireworks.
This is the part of the story that really gave me pause. The falling leaves.
Yeah, let's just slow down and try to picture this. They see hundreds, maybe even thousands of shiny objects start to fall from the sky. But they're not falling like rocks. They're drifting, swaying back and forth.
Felber compares them to falling leaves or confetti.
Which sounds almost
Yeah.
beautiful.
It sounds
perhaps.
mesmerizing.
And that's the trap. It looked like a pyrotechnic display. It disarmed Tom's threat response, at least for a moment, because it didn't look like an attack. It looked like a celebration. It's a classic predator move in nature, isn't it? Hypnotize your prey with some kind of display right before you strike.
So they're just standing there watching this beautiful, strange confetti fall from the sky,
Yeah.
and then the objects hit the ground.
And the beauty just vanishes instantly because they realized these weren't just lights. They were containers or vehicles. And as soon as they touched the desert floor, the Giffords realized they were completely surrounded.
This is where the Army of Eyes comes in.
In the darkness, all around the camper, they saw thousands of pairs of glowing red eyes.
Thousands. I want you, the listener, to just try and picture that. You are miles and miles from any civilization. It's pitch black out. And in a full 360-degree circle around you, at about window height, are thousands of red eyes just staring.
Elise's mind just snaps. It can't process aliens. It's too big of a leap. So her brain grabs the nearest, most logical, even if it's absurd, explanation. She starts screaming, "It's the Russians! We're being invaded!"
Which sounds completely bonkers to us now, but you have to remember, this is 1989. The Cold War is still fresh. For her, that was the only box that this horror could possibly fit into.
It just shows you how the mind scrambles to categorize something it can't comprehend. She thought it was a paratrooper invasion. And Tom, reacting to her cue, he flips into combat mode.
He goes for the guns.
He grabs his Remington shotgun, his Browning shotgun. He straps on his ammo loops. He's a hunter. He's ready.
In his mind, he's thinking, I'm going to take as many of these communists with me as I can.
He was ready to die fighting for his wife and his camper. He's pumping the shotgun. He's aiming at the door. But he never pulls the trigger.
Why not? What stops him?
The invasion shifts. It goes from being purely physical to being telepathic. This is what Felber calls the telepathic lockdown.
A voice in their heads.
A voice in their heads.
Yeah.
Elise hears it first. She describes it as a pervasive, synthetic-sounding voice inside her skull. And the message was incredibly specific.
No, we come in peace.
Not even close. The message was, don't try to harm us. Don't act aggressively or we will kill you.
Just a straight command. Comply or die.
It's functional. It's an order. Tom hears it too a moment later. And the effect is immediate. Total submission. They are forced, and they describe it as being physically and mentally forced, to retreat to the back of the camper.
And they just sit on the floor?
They sit on the floor cross-legged, like children, stripped of all agency, all will to fight.
And then the sentries show up. And this, for me, this is the detail that makes me think Felber isn't just making this all up. Because if you're writing a sci-fi novel, you send in a cool robot with a laser gun.
Right.
You don't send in a fire hydrant.
It is such a bizarrely specific and uncinematic detail. Felber describes two objects that just appear and station themselves at the back of the camper, essentially guarding them. He calls them gray stumps or bolts. They look like squat metal fire hydrants, no arms, no legs, just these dense, heavy objects.
And they're electrified. There was a force field.
It seems so. They generated some kind of energy field. Tom, even with a telepathic command, his fighting spirit wasn't totally gone. At one point, he tried to make a move to just scoot forward a little.
Yeah.
The sentries moved forward in perfect unison with him, and he was hit with this powerful jolt of energy. They were completely penned in.
So just to recap the scene, they are trapped, sitting on the floor of their camper. Thousands of red eyes are outside. 2 robotic fire hydrants are blocking the only exit. And then the sky disappears.
The mothership arrives. And again, we have to talk about scale here. This is not the Millennium Falcon zipping around. Felber directly compares it to the craft that Governor Fife Symington saw during the Phoenix Lights incident in 1997.
Which was famously described as being over a mile wide.
Capping the valley. That's the phrase the Giffords used. It was so enormous that it blocked out all the stars. It was like a physical ceiling being lowered down onto the desert.
And it wasn't just a big, flat object. It had a structure.
A complex structure. It had 6 smaller, but still large, craft hinged underneath it, like parasites or docking ships attached to an aircraft carrier. And from the main body, a massive beam shoots down.
A transport beam.
A transport beam. They described it as being 200 or 300 feet in diameter.
Right.
And they could see things going up and things coming down. It was a logistics operation.
And while all that is happening in the air, the searcher shows up on the ground.
Yes, the searcher. This brings us right back to the rare earth minerals.
What did this thing look like?
It was a triangular device that seemed to be drilling or scanning the desert floor, and it brought with it this sensory assault. The Giffords describe a terrible, overpowering smell of sulfur and burning rubber.
Brimstone. The smell of brimstone. That shows up everywhere, in old folklore, in demonology, and in a surprising number of modern UFO encounters.
It does. And usually, we might attribute that to, ozone or some kind of atmospheric ionization from a propulsion system. But in this case, Felber directly links it to the machinery itself, the grinding, the heat, the friction of this thing drilling into the earth. The Giffords had this immediate intuition that the machine was mining. It was looking for something specific in the ground.
So if we just pause the narrative for a second and look at the situation tactically, you have a massive mothership providing air support and transport.
Sure.
You have a perimeter that is secured by what seems to be infantry, the thousands of red eyes and automated drones, the fire hydrant sentries.
Sure.
And you have a piece of heavy equipment, the searcher, on the ground, actively extracting resources. This isn't an encounter. This is a mining operation.
It's a resource extraction mission. And the Giffords, they were just roadkill. They were ants on the construction site.
But then the interaction changes. Because they didn't just ignore the ants, they started to play with them. And this is where we have to break down the different types of entities involved. Felber identifies 3 very distinct types.
The taxonomy of the Mojave.
Yeah.
It's fascinating because it really suggests a hierarchy or some kind of caste system. First, you have the gremlins.
The red-eyed ones.
Yes, they were small, almost dwarf-like, with leathery faces and those glowing red eyes. And Felber's description of them is that they seemed almost sadistic. They seemed to take actual glee in the Giffords' terror.
They were agitated.
Very jumping around, frenzied, excited, like animals smelling blood.
Okay, so that's type 1, the gremlins.
Type 2, you have the sentries, the fire hydrants. They seemed purely robotic, no emotion, no interaction, just utility droids performing a function.
And then the third group appears.
The third group, the illuminated figures.
These are the ones that actually scared me the most reading it, because they weren't acting like frenzied animals.
No, they were the opposite. 9 of these figures appeared around the camper. They were taller, maybe 5'4". They had spindly appendages, large heads, and these huge raven black eyes. Their torsos were described as undeveloped, almost like a child's.
And they were glowing.
Illuminated from within. That's how Elise described it.
And their demeanor was completely different from the gremlins.
Completely. It was clinical, cold, detached. If the gremlins were the feral dogs, these are the scientists in lab coats. They were the managers of the operation. And they were the ones who were masters of the telepathic communication.
And this is what leads us into the experimentation phase. And I think we should warn listeners, this part gets very abstract and pretty disturbing. It's not the physical probing that we usually hear about in these stories. It's internal.
It's the extraction of emotion. Felber describes a process where these illuminated figures use some kind of method. Elise could only liken it to a syringe, but for the mind to literally pull emotions out of their heads.
What does that even mean, practically? How did that feel?
It felt like they were manipulating the Giffords' neurochemistry on demand. They would induce a state of absolute primal terror, and then they would extract it. Then they'd induce a state of calm, and then back to terror again.
Like they were turning a dial. Let's see how much fear we can generate in the male specimen. Now let's observe the female's reaction to the same stimulus.
That's exactly it. They were testing the absolute limits of the human stress response, like lab animals. And this is where the connection to the gremlins comes back into play.
The red-eyed ones?
It seemed to the Giffords that the gremlins were feeding off the agitation and the terror that this experimentation was producing.
Feeding off it? Like energetically?
Like loosh. It's a term you hear in these more esoteric circles. The theory that intense human emotion, especially negative emotions like fear and terror, generates a kind of psychic or ethereal energy that certain non-human entities can actually consume.
Like a food source.
Or a drug. The illuminated figures were the chefs cooking up this potent fear, and the gremlins were the diners getting high on the terror.
That reframes the entire mining theory. It wasn't just one operation, it was 2.
Exactly. The searcher was on the ground, mining the dirt for lanthanum. And the illuminated figures were inside the camper, mining the Giffords for adrenaline.
Humans as just another natural resource.
In every conceivable sense of the word.
That is a profoundly horrific concept. But how do we know this wasn't just a shared nightmare? A folie à deux. Felber points to the tapes as the strongest evidence.
The hypnosis tapes. I mentioned Dr. Annixter, the FBI's guy. When he put Elise under hypnosis, something happened that Felber said shook him to his absolute core.
Her voice changed.
It changed drastically. She didn't sound like Elise, the homemaker from suburbia. She began speaking in what he described as a staccato, robotic voice.
Robotic.
And she was using this incredibly precise, almost technical form of English that was not part of her normal vocabulary. She was describing the events in real time, in the present tense. They're here now. They are moving toward the camper.
She wasn't remembering a dream. She was reliving a recording that was stored in her brain.
That's what Dr. Annixter believed. He noted that she was accessing a layer of her memory that had been effectively cauterized by the sheer trauma of the event. The voice change wasn't theatrical, it was neurological. It was the sound of the human brain bypassing its own emotional safety filters to just report the raw data.
So eventually the 8 hours pass, the sun starts to come up, the ships leave, and the Giffords are just left there in their camper, alive.
Physically alive, yes, but psychologically. Felber says they carried the branding iron of this memory for the rest of their lives.
They never went on Oprah or Donahue.
No. And to me, that's the most telling piece of behavioral evidence of all. If this was a hoax for fame or money, 1989 was the golden age for it. They could have sold the rights, gone on every talk show, become celebrities in that world.
Instead, they did the opposite.
They buried it. They went back to their lives. They raised their kids. They worked their jobs. But they retreated from the world. They were scarred, and they just wanted to be left alone.
And Felber, the guy who started out as the hard-nosed skeptic with the BS detector. Where did he land after all this?
It completely changed his entire worldview. He concludes that the reality we perceive every day is not the full picture. He uses this metaphor of a curtain.
A curtain?
He says that our reality is draped in a curtain, and that curtain hides a parallel existence. A greater, much stranger, much darker reality that is going on all the time right next to us.
And most of us never see it.
Most of us go our whole lives just staring at the patterns on the curtain thinking it's a solid wall. But every now and then, through bad luck, or a weird coincidence like a full campsite, the wind blows just right, the curtain flutters for a second, and you get a glimpse of what's really behind it.
And the Giffords didn't just get a glimpse, they were pushed right through it.
They fell through the curtain, and they had to spend 8 hours on the other side.
It's a terrifying thought that the only thing separating us from that kind of horror is just probability, a random chance.
Probability and perception.
So let's try and wrap this up. Let's synthesize. What is the ultimate takeaway from the Mojave Incident? Because it's a story that seems to fuse so many genres. It's sci-fi, it's a horror story, it's an industrial report.
I think the synthesis, the thing that ties it all together, is the question of intent. We spend so much time in this field asking, do they come in peace?
Yeah.
Or are they hostile invaders? Or do they want to study us? The Mojave Incident seems to suggest a chilling third option.
Which is?
Indifference.
An indifference.
Total, complete, cosmic indifference to our existence and our well-being. Think about it. If a mining company is building a road and they destroy an anthill to get to a copper deposit, they aren't at war with the ants. They don't hate the ants. They just don't care. The ants are simply in the way. Or, perhaps, as with the gremlins, the ants are just a convenient snack for the workers on their lunch break.
So the Giffords weren't chosen for some special purpose? They weren't special, they were just there.
They were available resources
Yeah.
in a resource-rich environment. That's all.
That is a profoundly sobering thought to end on. But it's one you have to consider. If we aren't the center of the universe, if we aren't the crown of creation, then maybe we're just part of the landscape.
We're part of the mineral deposit.
Laughs nervously. Yeah. Right. Thanks for that image.
You're welcome.
Look, this is obviously an incredibly dense case. We've tried to cover the geology, the psychology, the technology of it, but I am certain you have questions. Maybe you have a theory about those fire hydrant bots we didn't think of.
Please go over to the UFOforums.com. The thread for this deep dive is open. I am genuinely curious if anyone out there has ever heard of that specific falling leaf camouflage tactic before that feels so unique to this one case.
Yes, please join the conversation. And for all of you watching on our YouTube channel, if you could hit the like and subscribe buttons, it truly does help the channel grow, and it allows us to keep doing deep dives into cases like this one.
Stay safe out there, everybody.
And maybe, if the campsite's full next time, just go home.
That is some very good advice.
Until next time, keep watching the skies.